The morning sun cut sharp, dusty lines through the gaps in the barnwood. The farmer and his friend moved toward the back, their boots crunching against the dry, scattered hay. It was a morning like any other, until the sound stopped them dead. A soft, rhythmic cluck echoed from the deep shadows of the doorway. They froze. In the center of the barn, the goose stood with its chest puffed out, guarding something on the dirt floor. A smooth, heavy object caught the light, reflecting a brilliance that did not belong in the dim, weathered space. The farmer stepped forward, his knees popping in the sudden silence. He crouched, reaching out until his fingers brushed the surface. It was cold. He lifted the object, feeling the unnatural density of it. As he turned the golden egg in his hands, the metal shimmered, casting a warm, heavy glow against his palms. "Look at this," he whispered, his breath hitching in his chest. His friend leaned in, squinting against the glare. The shock faded by midday, replaced by a frantic, silent urgency. They spent the hours reinforcing the barn door, driving heavy nails into the wood and clearing away sharp debris that might harm the goose. Every movement was calculated. They worked until the light failed, then took turns watching the entrance through the night. When the sun broke the horizon the next morning, they returned to the spot. The goose sat unmoved. Beside it, another golden egg rested in the straw. The pattern was set. A new, disciplined routine took hold of their lives. One would carry heavy buckets of water to the garden rows, while the other measured out fresh grain with precise, steady hands. They never left the barn unattended. During the afternoons, the goose waddled behind them as they weeded the vegetables, pecking at their heels and flapping its wings. Whenever they paused to catch their breath, they moved with a synchronized efficiency, treating the barn as a fortress. The basket in the corner of the barn grew heavier with every passing week. It was no longer a simple container. It was a burden of solid, unyielding metal. The farmer and his friend moved with a new, grinding intensity. They spent their mornings hauling water until their shoulders ached, and their afternoons clearing rows until their palms were raw and blistered. The gold did not move. It sat in the straw, dense and silent, watching them work. The contrast became impossible to ignore. They were sweating, straining, and wearing themselves thin, while the pile of eggs remained perfectly, coldly still. Every time they passed the basket, the weight of it seemed to pull at the air in the room. They stopped talking during their chores. The silence was not peaceful anymore. It was thick with the effort of maintaining their secret. They worked faster, driven by a need to keep pace with the goose. But the faster they moved, the more exhausted they became. Their boots dragged in the dirt, their movements lost the fluid grace of the early days, replaced by the stiff, mechanical rhythm of men pushed to their limits. The gold was supposed to be a prize, but as the pile grew, it felt more like an anchor. The sun dipped low, casting long, distorted shadows across the dirt. The friend drove his shovel into the earth, cutting a deep trench for the irrigation line. The farmer followed, his hands gripping the handle of his own tool, his muscles locked in a familiar, repetitive ache. They stopped at the same time, chests heaving, sweat cooling on their skin. They turned back toward the barn. Through the open door, the basket of golden eggs caught the final, amber rays of the day. It glowed with a harsh, unyielding light. They looked from the basket to the rows of green vegetables they had nurtured from the soil. The garden was alive, shifting in the evening breeze, while the gold remained cold and indifferent. The farmer wiped his forehead with the back of his hand, his gaze lingering on the rows of plants. He looked at his friend. There was no need for words. The weight of the gold had been a distraction from the steady, reliable rhythm of their shared work. They had built this life together, day by day, through patience and mutual reliance. They dropped their shovels, the metal clattering against the stones, and stood in the quiet, fading light, finally understanding that the value of their days was not measured in weight, but in the strength of their partnership. The farmer reached out and latched the garden gate, but he did not turn back toward the barn. He looked at the heavy door, still swinging slightly on its iron hinges. He left it open. The friend nodded, wiped his hands on his trousers, and started toward the house. They did not check the lock. They did not count the eggs. The metallic weight that had defined their weeks no longer dictated their movements. They walked across the yard, their boots pressing into the cooling soil, leaving the barn to the shadows. The sun vanished behind the ridge, leaving the sky in shades of deep purple. They reached the porch and sat down, side by side, watching the stars emerge. The barn door remained wide open, a dark rectangle against the pale wood, but neither man looked back. They had secured their life through patience and shared labor. They sat in the dark, listening to the wind move through the trees, content with the simple, steady rhythm of their days.